or service? Did you know you can earn hard currency and more significant returns by exporting? Contact the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to help propel your business along the export lane.
Everything you can produce, the Jamaicans overseas want it. We're not going to get rich by just bringing down the debt. We're going to get rich by exporting a lot more. So grow exports, create job opportunities, drive economic growth through exports to make Jamaica a richer and much more prosperous country.
We want a piece for Jamaica.
Yo, what are you? Oh, man, none of that. Yo, no, brother, no, man.
Can I see you ever play ref? Dirty game,
yeah,
man,
but
please.
I like a bad game. No, I said, Pearson, you come from, brother, I want to live good, man. I want to live good, brethren. No shake on, I can play like a bad, brethren.
Really have to shake on?
Yeah, man, and no badness, brethren. Just live good, man.
Come together as one and make the violence done.
I'm Nigel Clark. I'm the Minister of Finance and the Public Service. We want a public service that is fair, a public service that values people, and a public service that delivers high quality services. And in order to do so, we need to transform the public service. Jamaica competes in a global environment. The technology has transformed the way in which the world works. And for us to remain competitive, the public service needs to be in a position to deliver services effectively, efficiently, and in good time.
Brought to you by the Transformation Implementation Unit.
By whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding. We, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together, in thy name do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interest, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and the states within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
This humble house now resume its sitting. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to the sitting of this Honorable House of Representatives on Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. I would like to extend warm welcome to those who are joining us online via the various social media platforms and the PBCJ live stream. Thank you. House Leader. Call of the roll, sorry.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Dr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malahoo Forte, Dr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Charles Jr., Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terrelong, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Ms. Grange, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Enriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblis, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Hutchinson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before the next matter, let me just welcome Madam Minister Grange. Welcome back to Parliament, Madam. We hope that you continue to be blessed. Statement by ministers.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to join you in welcoming members and members who are online and in cyber land connecting with us for this sitting of the House. Mr. Speaker, there are 4 statements for today. The Ministers of Education, Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Science, Energy, Telecommunications, and Transport, Justice. I did say 4, so I will vice the Minister of Education for the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. So we will have 4. I did say vice the Minister of Education. So the 4 will be the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, the Minister of Agriculture, and the Minister of Science, Telecommunications, and Transport. In that order, Mr. Speaker. So I would invite you to ask the Minister of Justice to lead off. May it please you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The copies are being circulated. A very useful and important statement, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure to present before the House today the Administrator General's Maximum Value of Small Estates Amendment Order 2024. The Ministry, Mr. Speaker, is empowered by virtue of Section 53A(1) of the Administrator General's Act to enact this order. The section states, and I quote, "Where the Administrator General is satisfied that an estate consists solely of personality not exceeded $100,000 or such high amount as the Minister may by order prescribe, it shall be lawful for the Administrator General, without the grant of letter of administration, to administer that estate for the benefit of the persons interested therein, as if letters of administration had been granted to him." The Administrator General's Department, Mr. Speaker, is an executive agency within the portfolio of the Ministry of Justice. The department primarily administers estates in which persons die intestate, that is, without a valid will, while also leaving behind at least one minor child. The department is required to manage these estates until the youngest minor child attains the age of majority, that is 18 years. Prior to this order, Mr. Speaker, the Administrator General would be empowered to administer estates consisting solely of personal property not exceeding $100,000 without a need for a grant of administration from the courts. Where, however, an individual dies intestate, leaving only personal property, and the value of these estates amounted to no more than $100,000, before anyone could benefit from the grant of this estate, a grant of administration would have been required to access these assets. This at times, Mr. Speaker, resulted in a lengthy process to obtain grant of administration, a lengthy process to collect the assets and complete estate administration, significant costs to obtain the grant of administration. And so, Mr. Speaker, the previous estates did not adequately meet the needs of the populace, particularly where monies above $100,000 were being held in the bank or with the National Housing Trust, but could not be accessed by the beneficiaries of deceased persons as they were unable to afford the legal fees to obtain the grant of administration. In some instances, the legal fees exceeded the value of the monies held or the value of the asset falling to the estate. This resulted in some estates being in abeyance for protracted periods, even in cases where there is a depreciating asset. So, Mr. Speaker, you'll notice on a regular basis, the banks advertise pages and pages of money being held by them. Many of them are small amounts, yes, but some are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the problem, Mr. Speaker, is that many times these monies exist because the persons have died. But the families can't access these funds from the banks or from NHT or from credit union, generally where monies are, unless they do letters of administration. But to do the letters of administration, Mr. Speaker, the legal cost oftentimes is more than sometimes what are substantially over $100,000. So when it's up to $100,000, it doesn't make sense. So this, Mr. Speaker, amendment is to increase from $100,000 to a new figure. So, Mr. Speaker, in 2020, when this Parliament considered and approved the increase of the deposit insurance coverage limited to $1.2 million, it was noted that the increase effectively covered approximately 97% of all accounts at deposit-taking institutions. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, raising the limit of the small estate threshold to $1.5 million would permit access to most of the deposits of deceased account holders who died intestate without the requirement of a grant of administration, thereby unlocking wealth and monies for productive purposes. The decision was therefore taken, Mr. Speaker, to increase the threshold limit of small estates to $1,500,000. This increase became effective with the gazetting of this order on August 29, 2024. There are significant benefits, Mr. Speaker, from this amendment. As I noted, with this increase to the threshold limit of small estates, the Administrator General will be empowered to administer estate consisting of owner personality not exceeding 1.5 million without obtaining a grant of administration. There will also be a reduction in the number of cases in which the Administrator General is required to issue instrument of administration, thereby allowing the department to focus on other functions and activities. More speedy distribution of generational wealth to beneficiaries. Reduction in legal costs to beneficiaries. Reduced burden on the parish and high courts as less applications for grants of administration will be filed. All estates for persons who died without leaving a will and without minor beneficiaries, but containing personality valued less than 1.5 million, can now be referred to the Administrator General's Department for collection and distribution without the need for a grant of administration. The Administrator General's Department requirements in order to administer these estates are: 1, completed form of particulars; 2, proof of debt; 3, proof of asset, that is personality only, valuing less than 1.5 million; and 4, proof of beneficiary's relationship to the deceased. Mr. Speaker, this decision to increase the limit for small estates to 1.5 million is a significant step that will allow beneficiaries to receive their entitlements in a timely manner. This change will not only facilitate better access to inherited assets for beneficiaries, but also streamline the administration process and reduce the burden on the courts. So, Mr. Speaker, this is really for the vast majority of families across Jamaica to be able to access personality. A good example, Mr. Speaker, is a deceased might own a car, a motor car, valued, say, $1 million. But to get it, that motor car transferred to a member of the family, they would have to go through a process of letters of administration. It might cost $200,000-300,000 just to get a car valued $500,000 or $1 million transferred. And that was prohibitive. So the car just, remain, or they keep renewing the license in the name of the deceased, which is improper. So this, Mr. Speaker, where the value of the motor vehicle is less than 1.5, would allow the Administrator General to assist the family in transferring the property to a family member. And this is the same with any other personality. And this, Mr. Speaker, will assist tens of thousands of Jamaicans who now are frustrated because they can't get access to wealth left by the deceased. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Legal Affairs and Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahoo Forte.
To the Minister of Energy, as the statement has not been forwarded to the members of the House.
Honorable Daryl Vaz, Member, Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to update this Honorable House on the efforts of the Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport through the recent acquisition of the 100 new compressed natural gas buses, including 10 specially designed units fit with ramps and amenities for special needs passengers. This initiative not only addresses long-standing challenges within the Kingston and Metropolitan Transport region, but also extends to Western Jamaica, bolstered by the transfer of 12 JUTC new ANCAI units to the Montego Bay Metro. Madam Speaker, of the 63 constituencies represented here, the JUTC primarily serves at best 20 or approximately 30%. As a rural MP, I'll continue to champion the expansion of the JUTC into rural parishes. With the 200% increase in the Montego Bay Metro fleet, we have added 4 rural schools into the fold of those being provided with public transportation. Teachers, students, and staff from the Hopewell High, Irwin High, Mushet High, and Spot Valley High can now use public transportation to their respective schools and back. Mr. Speaker, for the first time, 9 school routes are now served within rural Jamaica by the Montego Bay Metro fleet. Mr. Speaker, it's important to note that there are other schools in Montego Bay that are also benefiting greatly from the expansion. These include Mount Alvernia High School, Herbert Morrison High School, Montego Bay High, Montego Bay Community College, and St. James High. That's 14 schools onboarding to the public transportation system as a result of the efforts of this administration. The ministry has been consistently using a data-driven, hands-on approach to meet the challenges faced by the commuters, and I can say it without fear of contradiction that this year's back-to-school deployment of buses have been one of the most effective and seamless in recent history. Mr. Speaker, I should add to that for the first time, with just under 300 buses that were rolled out for back to school, 175 of them are new buses, which now puts us in a position where we have more new buses being rolled out than the old buses as old as 14 years old. Colleagues, I must mention that sections of the Barracks Road primary building was recently damaged by Hurricane Beryl and are currently being refurbished. The Montego Bay Metro was contacted by the Regional 4 Office of the Ministry of Education and Youth to assist in transporting students on a daily basis to the Faith Temple Assemblies of God, where classes are temporarily being held. Minister Williams and I have collaborated on many initiatives in the past, and this was no different. So far, 1,521 students have been shuttled, bringing relief to the Ministry of Education and Youth with little or no learning loss for the affected classes. This adds to the tremendous impact that the Montego Bay Metro is having across Western Jamaica. In terms of ridership, the Montego Bay Metro has seen an increase when comparing the first 3 weeks in September 2024 with the same period in September 2023. Mr. Speaker, I want to share some commuters' transport data with the House today regarding the impact we are having on Western Jamaica through the expansion of Montego Bay Metro services. We have seen a 35% increase in the number of students transported this period when compared to 2023, and a 24% increase in the number of seniors transported, and a 31% increase in the number of adults transported over this period. A total of 58,185 Jamaicans were transported during September 2024, when compared to 40,199 during the same period for 2023. So, Speaker, this is a type of impact that we want to replicate across other constituencies. And I can assure you that this will remain my priority. When you see the type of development and advancement hitting the rural communities, you don't want a change, colleagues, you want a chance to experience this for your constituencies, and we are committed to making that a reality. Mr. Speaker, relating to schools, I received a message just recently from a user on social media regarding our sister, a student from the Caribbean Maritime University within East Kingston. The number 98 bus that usually drops students on the school compound had reportedly stopped doing so, forcing students to walk long distances. This was a safety concern for students, and in particular female staff and students. Madam Speaker, following discussions with the JUTC, I'm pleased to announce that the JUTC will resume the transportation of CMU students on campus for disembarking. An arrangement is in place for staff and students to be taken to the campus in the mornings and picked up between 2 p.m. and 4:15 p.m. daily. Additionally, we extend the support through cooperation with the JUTC drivers along the 98 route to ensure CMU students must be taken to the school compound once they are on the buses. I've been informed by the JUTC that there are 5 buses currently along the 98 route, with 1 bus specifically assigned to the CMU. As we know, Mr. Speaker, reliable transportation is critical for ensuring that our children can access education safely and efficiently. With the introduction of these buses, we are taking significant steps toward a cleaner, greener, and more reliable public transportation system. I stand here proud and confident that since 2023, 170 new buses have been purchased by the government of Jamaica at a cost of $5 billion Jamaican dollars. Mr. Speaker, no loans, no borrowing, no begging, solely from the funds of the Jamaican coffers, the consolidated fund. The JUTC has faced considerable challenges and successes. From 2014 to 2020, JUTC saw a concerning decline in the average daily buses available, which directly affected our capacity to transport commuters efficiently. The pandemic further caused this situation, resulting in a drastic reduction in both the number of buses and passenger lift, dropping to an alarming low in 2021. However, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that we're on the path to recovery. Under this government, in 2024, we have increased our daily bus availability to 260, and the passenger lift has surged to over 2.4 million passengers. Madam, Mr. Speaker, this increase in monthly passenger lift for September 24 is the highest it has been in many, many years. This revival reflects our commitment to enhancing public transportation and meeting the needs of our commuters and their families. Mr. Speaker, with the new CNG units, 11 previously low dispatch bus routes will be enhanced. The Rockport and Spanish Town depots can increase the number of buses on critical routes, including Spanish Town to Halfway Tree, Spanish Town to downtown Kingston, Greater Portmore to Halfway Tree and downtown Kingston, Price Right to downtown Kingston, Chancery Street to downtown Kingston, Spanish Town to Crossroads, Border and Above Rocks to Templar Hall, downtown Kingston to Bull Bay, downtown Kingston to Norman Manley International Airport and Port Royal, Harbour View to downtown Kingston, and downtown Kingston to Gordon Town. Madam Speaker, with the introduction of 17 articulated buses that are being dispatched from the Spanish Town depot, designed to transport larger number of passengers efficiently at the Halfway Tree Transport Center and the JUTC downtown hub, the weight of passengers will be significantly reduced. Mr. Speaker, I must remind my colleagues in this honorable House and those that are watching that in December 2023, I made a plea asking the commuters to bear with me and be patient and give me 6 months to be able to show them the improved service. And I stand here proud to say that commitment promised, commitment delivered. Madam Speaker, in September 2024, we rolled out 8 refurbished Hill Route buses, with an additional 8 expected to be refurbished and introduced by January 25. That will take us on those Hill routes to 24 reconditioned buses that will improve the efficiency significantly for those persons who have to come from the hills of St. Andrew, both East Rural and West Rural. Madam Speaker, the shift from diesel to CNG at the Portmore Depot is projected to yield fuel savings of approximately $1.8 billion annually. This transition not only reduces operational costs, but also enhances national productivity by minimizing time spent in traffic. Madam Speaker, looking ahead, the Minister of Finance has given his commitment for the refurbishing of 16 Golden Dragon buses at a cost of 193.2 million Jamaican dollars, which is hopefully to be completed by January 25, which is the fourth quarter of this fiscal year. The refurbishing of 30 articulated buses has a cost of 708 million Jamaican dollars. Madam Speaker, this will begin in the third quarter of this financial year. The procurement of phase 2 of the buses. So phase 2 of the buses would mean that 100 new buses that are now on the road was phase 1. And the phase 2 will be 70 CNG buses and 30 diesel coach buses, with 10 of these 100 buses being outfitted for special needs persons in keeping with the government of Jamaica's policy. The initial deposit of $990 million for the buses, Madam Speaker, will be paid over in the fourth quarter of 24-25 financial year. Why is this significant, Madam Speaker? Because it means that if we pay the deposit in this side of the fiscal year and put the buses in production, we will have those 100 buses here the same time as the first 100, which will be approximately between June and July 2025, again, just in time for the next round of back to school, Madam Speaker. In December 2023, when I said the 100 new buses were coming, they doubted it was possible. Some said it could not be done in 6 months. Working alongside with the Ministry of Finance and members of my ministry team, they said it was a dream. But guess what, Madam Speaker? This is part of the dream team. Madam Speaker, we are now in the month of September, and I say to all Jamaica commuters, more is in store. The government is not only committing to the purchase of another 100 new buses, but it's also looking to expand routes based on improvement of infrastructure that has been happening in terms of the South Coast Highway Improvement Project and, of course, the expansion of the East-West Highway all the way to Williamsfield. Madam Speaker, this will be the first time since 2014 that the JUTC has had an increase in its fleet for 3 consecutive years. We have stemmed the decline in 2023 and will continue increasing the fleet and the operations of the JUTC into 2025. Madam Speaker, these enhancements reflect this government's commitment to providing reliable, safe, and environmentally friendly public transportation options for all Jamaica. By addressing service gaps and modernizing our fleet, we are setting the stage for a more efficient transit system that benefits both our citizens and the economy. In closing, let me just say also that in relation to the issue of fuel theft, which has been a perennial problem, obviously transitioning into CNG buses and then into electric buses, that will definitely do a good job in stemming that situation. And most importantly, the other situation that faces us in relation to the collection of fares, and some fare going into the coffers of the government and some elsewhere. Again, we are committing to go cashless, fully cashless, by January 2025, and that again will obviously make it more convenient for commuters and, of course, improve the efficiency of the JUTC. As I said before, and I want to close on that, all of these new buses without a complete and comprehensive look at the operations of JUTC would be for zero. So I want to reassure and commit that this will be a part of the overall plan going forward to make sure that we have the management structure in place to be able to utilize the buses the most efficient and conservationist way possible. Madam Speaker, I look forward to the continued support of all my colleagues as we implement these initiatives and strive to improve public transportation, not just in the KMTR, but overall in every one of the 63 constituencies to allow for more and better production and safer rides, especially for our children, especially school children. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank my colleagues for your time.
Thanks, Minister. The member from Manchester Northwest will respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we welcome the statement by the Minister. It would not be fair for us to say that we do not welcome the inclusion of 171 new buses over the since last year into this year, into the fleet of the JUTC. But there are some issues, Madam Speaker, because the Minister, in his usual vim and vigor, makes it seem like the situation at the JUTC has been resolved. It has been dealt with the inclusion of these 171 new buses. Because the Minister speaks about an availability of 260 buses on a daily basis. Even if those 260 buses were rolled out on a daily basis, we are still about 50% of the required fleet of the JUTC. What is really needed to bring the fare box up to something that is respectable? On a daily basis, the average rollout is about 220 to 230 buses. So you're still half of the fleet. Because if you are to look at those 230 buses, the inclusion of 171 new buses, you still have 60 of those buses which are older buses. So the inclusion of the 171 has not really increased the fleet of the JUTC as the Minister would want. Yeah? And we acknowledge and we hear the Minister that some additional buses will be included. But what I want to find out from the Minister is because in your statement, Minister, you spoke about 30 Volvo buses that will be refurbished at a cost of $708 million. That works out to about $24 million per bus. But if I'm to go by the figure that you have here, for the 171 new buses, it would work out to about $30 million per bus. So, in essence, you're fixing older buses that are about 10 years old or even older, which is expensive. Will you get a better return on your investment if you took that money and bought new buses vis-a-vis the repair of these buses at that cost? Because despite that you have the inclusion of these 171 new buses, you're still being subsidized by taxpayers of the rate of $10 billion for this financial year, looking at a loss of approximately $10 billion. So even at the beginning of the financial year, the numbers that the JUTC presented is that even with the inclusion of the new buses, they are not expecting to see any great increase in the fare box. Yeah? So we're moving, yes, in putting in new buses, but we're not moving in the financial condition of the JUTC. We recognize that there is savings. The inclusion of the CNG buses is one that we support. We see the savings that the CNG will bring to the JUTC itself. At the end of the financial year, we will see if there is any difference in the fuel consumption, the spend for the fuel consumption, if there is going to be any difference. But the condition of JUTC, and you did not hear any noise in the back-to-school period, because the truth be told is that the inclusion of the new buses, yes, people were happy to see it, but they have just gotten satisfied with the service that they have been given. So, or the lack thereof of the service that they have been given over the period by the JUTC. It's a step in the right direction. We won't deny that. And we hope to continue seeing the further inclusion of new buses. But it would be remiss of us to think that the JUTC is any better condition than it was before the inclusion of these 171 new buses. So, Minister, we're on this side, happy that there finally is some inclusion of new rolling stock to the JUTC. But this is not the solution. It is not a fix right now, as it is. And time will tell if the commitment that you speak about, if it is still there to fix the JUTC. Because as much as we speak about the bus system in Montego Bay, yes, we are celebrating, but you're still 50% below the required need of the Montego Bay Metro. You have 12 buses, they need 30 buses. I got a report recently of the train service from Linstead to Spanish Town that it has not run in a few weeks. You know, what is happening with that? And the inclusion of the articulated, yes, but at what cost are we repairing these articulated buses, these 30 buses? Is it to the benefit of the JUTC, or do we look at new buses? So there's still a lot to be done. And Minister, again, I keep asking, where is that national transport plan? Because you keep on coming and announcing a rural bus system, but yet still that in the KMTR is not fixed. How are we going to expand to the rural parishes when we have not? It is needed. And I accept that you said that private investors need to be included. But what happened to the KMTR? The subsidy that we are giving to those school children and the elderly in the KMTR, are we going to fix it? Because it is your administration that rolled back the bus fare. Less fare box for the JUTC, but we have not yet dealt with the true problem and challenges of the, and rolling back the bus fare is not a bad thing, but we are subsidizing the JUTC at $10 billion per year right now. So are we really fixing the true fundamentals of the JUTC, or are we just making grand announcements? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minister.
Member, for your insightful comments. Just to clarify for you in relation to the articulated buses. The 30 articulated buses are the Volvo buses that are here that basically can be refurbished. The cost of the refurbishing is about $250,000 to $275,000 US per bus, as against the cost of a new articulated bus at between 1.2 and 1.5 million US dollars. So again, spending that on 30 buses that we have here and getting another 10 years out of them, including a warranty on the refurbishing, as we are getting with the Golden Dragon, obviously makes good sense on the basis that we don't have unlimited funds to spend in buying new buses. The 30 articulated buses is strategic because when you dispatch those 30 articulated buses into the heavy traffic or the heavy commuter zone in the morning and the evening, it cleans it up in 1 or 2 bus loads as against 5 or 6. So again, we're trying to balance to see how in the short term we can fix the issue of the amount of buses that we are rolling out. When we say we are rolling out 260, it's more like 300 because we do have some in reserve in case there's issues. But the fact of the matter is that you are correct in terms of the fact that 260 is still not meeting the demand. But 260 with 175 new buses gives you much more efficiency than what we were experiencing before with all 14-year-old buses. So I take your point, and the fact of the matter is that just remind you that I've just been in the position just over a year, so I know that you're painting me for the entire 8 years. And I would ask you to judge this minister on the performance of the 15 months and not 15 years. But as I can say to you, that I am satisfied because I'm monitoring on a daily basis and I get my reports every morning and every evening, and you get them as well through another source. But what I can say, what I can say is that without a shadow of a doubt, the misery index that I always speak about is going in the right direction, without a doubt. And I see my colleague member from East Kingston and Port Royal, and he didn't even look up when I told him about the additional CMU buses and the additional buses for Norman Manley Airport and Port Royal. But you know I always look after you, right? Whether you're hearing or you're not hearing. I know your mind is somewhere else. But just to say, we are moving in the right direction, and it is beneficial to all of Jamaica. And that is the most important thing, all the commuters and all the routes. And we continue to strive for excellence. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Minister. Next, we will hear from the Minister of Marlene. The Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, member from St. James West Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This ministerial statement is to update the Honorable House and the people of Jamaica on the status of the work to reform the Constitution of Jamaica since my last presentation here on the matter on June 11, 2024, during the sectoral debates. Madam Speaker, I ask that the copy of the statement sent for distribution be checked against presentation. The first one I sent had some typo. I've since sent another copy. But even so, I ask that it be checked against presentation. I invite the Honourable House to recall that following Cabinet's approval on May 20, 2024, the report of the Constitutional Reform Committee, the CRC, on the transition to the Republic of Jamaica and other matters was tabled on May 21, 2024 as a ministry paper.
Minister, a moment. Do you have a copy of your statement?
Yes, ma'am. I have sent it electronically to you, as I have sent it.
Minister,
I have sent it.
Members, the Minister is seeking your indulgence. The statement by Minister has been sent to the members of the House electronically so that we may follow. Thank you very much, Minister. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was saying, I invite the Honourable House to recall that following Cabinet's approval on May 20, 2024, the report of the Constitutional Reform Committee on the transition to the Republic of Jamaica and other matters was tabled on May 21, 2024 as a ministry paper. Since then, we, meaning the CRC and my ministry, have been tracking and paying very close attention to the feedback on the recommendations contained in the report. Cabinet had also given approval for the issuance of drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council to prepare the legislation required to establish the Republic of Jamaica and other matters. In particular, Cabinet gave approval for the enactment of legislation to revoke the Jamaica Order in Council 1962 and save the Constitution of Jamaica, which is at the second schedule, to effect its patriation. Abolish the British monarchy as head of state and replace it with the office of President for the Republic of Jamaica. Retain the parliamentary cabinet system, amend the Jamaica Independence Act, amend other associated legislation that may require consequential amendment, amend other related deeply entrenched provisions of the Constitution of Jamaica for which a referendum is required to amend, prescribe the procedure to obtain the approval of electors qualified to vote for election of members of the House of Representatives. In accordance with the approval granted by the Cabinet, drafting instructions were issued on June 24, 2024. The Chief Parliamentary Council dispatched 2 draft bills to the Ministry on July 22, 2024. The first is a bill entitled An Act to Repeal the Jamaica Constitution Order in Council 1962 to provide for the recognition of the Constitution of Jamaica as an act of the Parliament and people of Jamaica, to amend the Constitution of Jamaica to provide for a non-monarchical head of state, thereby establishing Jamaica as a republic, to make other amendments in respect of certain provisions of the Constitution of Jamaica, and to provide for connected matters. This is the Constitution Amendment Republic of Jamaica Bill 2024. The second bill is a bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Votes of Electors to be taken with respect to any amendment of the Constitution of Jamaica required to be submitted to electors pursuant to Section 49, subsection 3 of the Constitution, commonly known as a referendum. And this is the Referendum Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, I further remind the Honourable House that the constitutional reform work is being done in phases. The broad goals to be achieved in Phase 1 are taking the Constitution out of its current form as a schedule to the imperial instrument, the Order in Council, and to have it as an act of the Parliament and people of Jamaica. Among other things, the Statute Law Commissioners will be empowered to publish the Constitution of Jamaica, which will be read and construed as one with the amendments made thereto as an act comprising Volume 1 of the laws of Jamaica. We have described this goal as the Jamaicanization of the Constitution. Beyond putting the constitutional instrument in proper form, the goal also includes the insertion of a preamble, and a preamble is generally recognized as a useful introduction to a constitution. The insertion of our national emblems and symbols, adoption of provisions of the Jamaica Interpretation Act as relevant and appropriate to replace the UK Interpretation Act of 1889 to interpret the Constitution of Jamaica. The words of enactment have already been modernized with the amendment to Section 61 of the Constitution and is now law. Madam Speaker, while the work around this aspect of the reform is largely technical in nature and not easily connected to ordinary day-to-day activities of the man in the street, there is no partisan or other dispute anywhere that I am aware of about taking the required steps to achieve this goal. Within the CRC, the matter has boiled down to a drafting issue on how the reformed constitution will be presented. On this, we will be guided by and large by the draftsman. An expert committee has been established to recommend a preamble for inclusion in the reformed constitution. I invite the Honorable House to recall that the CRC advised in its report that we considered 8 preambles in total, 5 of which were appended to the 1995 report of the Joint Select Committee on Constitution and Electoral Reform, and an additional 3 were received from stakeholders. However, we were unable to arrive at a consensus on the preamble to be adopted, hence the recommendation for the establishment of an expert committee to consider the matter. Madam Speaker, I am happy to advise that this committee of experts was formally established on July 26, 2024, and has had 3 meetings to date. The committee is chaired by Dr. Nadine Spence in her capacity as the civil society representative on the CRC, and is comprised of Professor Kwame Dawes, the 2024 Poet Laureate of Jamaica and a Jamaican novelist, Dr. Joseph Farquharson, a senior lecturer in the Department of Language, Linguistics, and Philosophy at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus, and Mr. Frankie Campbell, bassist and manager of the award-winning show band Fab 5. The committee is supported by a secretariat comprising the technical team from the Constitutional Reform Division of the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs. I am advised that the committee has since agreed to its terms of reference, has met thrice, and has produced a draft preamble which will be refined over the coming days and submitted to the CRC for consideration. Madam Speaker, the second phase 2 goal, phase 1 goal, let me start again. The second phase 1 goal being pursued and which is addressed in the bill is the abolition of the monarchical form of government. There is no dispute of which I'm aware on the pursuit of this goal. The decision of the Cabinet to retain the parliamentary cabinet system was the clearest indication that we were not moving to the executive presidential system. The British monarch is to be replaced with a non-executive president as the formal head of state of the Republic of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, experiences worldwide have demonstrated that the executive presidential system often results in dictatorial, corrupt, and unfair governments. Even in countries with long histories of democracies, and we can name notable ones not too far from us, there has been evidence of instability and unjust and corrupt governments. In any comparative assessment of the history of countries throughout the world, countries with parliamentary cabinet systems have been well and better positioned to preserve human rights and achieve democratic stability and economic welfare compared to those with executive presidential systems. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, it is incorrect to regard the parliamentary system as purely one that was handed down by the British. Many countries that were not a part of the British Commonwealth have adopted, not inherited, a parliamentary cabinet system. The research also shows the tendency of executive presidents to lapse into dictators. And that is well worth noting as the debate continues in some spaces about which type of system, which type of republic. Transition to a non-executive presidency within the parliamentary cabinet system will therefore allow for the preservation of stability and better enable the establishment and pursuit of a more just and equitable society. The recommendation of the CRC regarding the method of appointment of the president contained in its report has been subject to numerous comments and criticisms, including but not limited to criticisms from former Prime Ministers Pattison and Bruce Golding and the Gleaner editorial.
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired. Turn your mic on, please.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the member be given additional time to complete her statement. Madam Speaker, I ask that she be given 5 minutes, be allowed to complete her statement. Thank you.
Thank you, House Leader. The question is that the member be allowed an additional 5 minutes to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Minister?
Grateful, Madam Speaker. As I was saying, the recommendation of the CRC regarding the method of appointment of the President contained in its report has been subject to numerous comments and criticisms, including but not limited to criticisms from former Prime Ministers Pattison and Golding and the Gleaner editorial. At the last meeting of the CRC on Wednesday, the 18th, that was last Wednesday, we received presentations from Jamaican for Justice and the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. They too have added their voice to the feedback. The committee is carefully reconsidering the matter. Dr. Lloyd Barnett has been tasked by the committee to formulate a revised recommendation for consideration and submission. We are also revising an aspect of the recommendation about the method to remove the President from office in direct response to comments from the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Mark Golding. Since the tabling of the report, the CRC has convened 7 meetings on June 7 and 26, July 10, 14, and 31, August 28, and September 18. The Drafting Strategy Subcommittee has met twice on July 26 and August 21 to review the Constitution Amendment Republic of Jamaica Bill. This committee is jointly chaired by Dr. Lloyd Barnett and me. Alongside these meetings, the ministry's own internal team has met 5 times on August 12, 19, September 4, 11, and 19 to review the bill. The Drafting Strategy Subcommittee of the Constitutional Reform Committee is scheduled to meet next on Wednesday, September 25, 2024. That is tomorrow. After the review of the bill is complete, it will go to the Legislation Committee of Cabinet and thereafter to the Cabinet for approval for tabling in this Honourable House. A joint select committee will be established to review the bill and report to the House. And Madam Speaker, the process to debate and pass the bill is set out in Section 49 of the Constitution. Since the establishment of the CRC and following the tabling of its report of recommendations, my ministry has been working to educate and engage the people. The lack of sufficient knowledge on the Constitution has been repeatedly highlighted as a risk to be managed in order for us to achieve the approval of the people for the change. In my own efforts to manage this risk from my role as the portfolio minister, I have learned something most profound. Although Jamaicans not learned in the law, but even among those who are, do not have a working knowledge or an in-depth knowledge of the Constitution of Jamaica, they know that there is a constitution which is the supreme law of the land. They know that the Constitution sets out the limits of the powers of government, and that where it is alleged that the powers have been exceeded or exercised wrongly, those who have the appropriate expert knowledge will take up their case before the court. So, Madam Speaker, the risk of the knowledge gap is being managed carefully. But make no mistake, even though the people don't know the content of the Constitution, they know that there exists a Constitution, and they know that it is the supreme law of the land, and they know that those who have the expertise will take up any matter where there is an alleged breach of the Constitution. So, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the limitations and the risks being managed, I should like to inform the Honourable House that the Legal Education and Corporate Communications and Public Relations divisions of the Ministry have executed numerous engagement activities within government and across government and the wider society. We have had meetings with ministries, departments, and agencies, including the Ministry of National Security, the United Pentecostal Church, Jamaica Full Gospel Churches. We have had online webinars, the Roman Catholic Church Group, the Jamaica Defense Force. We have had town hall meetings across the counties. We have had engagement with the Legal Officers Staff Association, the Jamaica Umbrella Groups of Churches, the University of Technology, the Micro Teachers College, the Shortwood Teachers College, the National Senior Citizens Corps, the Portmore Community College, Excelsior Community College, St. Michael's College and Seminary, the Jamaica Teachers Association, the Caribbean Maritime University. Well, we have had engagements, and engagements are scheduled to come, including with the Caribbean Maritime University, the College of Agriculture, Science and Education, the Monique College, Sigma College of Nursing, community engagement sessions island-wide. In fact, a series of community engagements will be implemented to deepen and broaden the education and engagement strategy, thereby enabling us to further reach the man in the street. And we have a new round of initiatives to commence on September 27, 2024, that will run through to April 3, 2025, all things remaining equal. Madam Speaker, this is the update to the Honourable House. The bills have been prepared, they are being reviewed. We are reviewing the recommendations against feedback also from members of the public. There are other matters that we have heard that should be pursued. But on these two goals, Madam Speaker, no disagreement has been expressed. As I take my seat, I remind members of this Honourable House that the reform of the Constitution that we are embarking on is a matter that transcends the side of the House form in government, but it includes the side of the House in opposition, and it also requires the approval of the people. Madam Speaker, as a parliament and as a nation, we have spoken a lot about furthering the goals of independence. The goals can't be achieved all at once. but there has been no doubt expressed on the need to put the Constitution as our supreme law in proper form and to abolish the monarchy as our head of state. Other reforms must naturally follow, but we have to start where there is agreement. And if we can't cooperate on the things that we agree, I don't know how we will cooperate on the things where we have not yet agreed. So I commit to continue to provide periodic update to this Honourable House and to the people on the progress of the work to reform the Constitution of Jamaica. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Responding will be the member from St. Andrew Western.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be very brief. It's really two questions. My understanding from the update, which I welcome, is that in respect of two matters, the impeachment provision and the appointment of the president, that there is a relook at the recommendation. Is there a group tasked to do that, and you're actively pursuing that? And in the meantime, a response to the recommendation would be placed in the draft bill for its review before it gets to cabinet. What's the sequence of that? The consideration of those two issues and the review in the draft bill.
Minister.
Member Hilton, I look forward to your presence at the next meeting of the Drafting Strategy Subcommittee, of which you are a member. Had you been present at last week's meeting of the committee, you would have been informed then that at the end of the meeting, we agreed on 3 issues that will further detain us. The first 2 I mentioned in my presentation, one being the drafting issue of how the reformed Constitution will be presented. The second, the method of appointment for the president. And the third matter that we raised was whether impeachment provisions for members of parliament and or other officials should be included. The deliberations will continue on the matter.
Members. Minister, thank you. I believe you have completed your response. Member. The member from St. Catherine Western, your comment may be off mic, but my ears are work from, oh, you know, Southwestern indeed. House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, the next statement would have been by the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Honorable Floyd Green. He's unavoidably running late, and so I will ask for a recommittal. Madam Speaker, when he gets here, if you could continue with the agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you, House Leader. Members, back to business. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following. annual report and audited financial statements of the Development Bank of Jamaica Limited for the financial year 2021-2022. Minister of Education and Youth Progress Report, Transforming Education for National Development. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions. House Leader. It's just about 2 minutes past. We're just 2 minutes out.
Madam Speaker, Honorable Daryl Vaz has response to question 4, which is on the notice paper.
We're running 2 minutes behind schedule, House Leader. It's now 3:17, being a little after 3:15. So procedurally.
Yes. Yes. So, Madam Speaker, I'm asking if the time being 3:17, I now move that the House be allowed to receive and answer questions at this time.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport is expected to answer the questions posed by the member from Port Royal and East Kingston. Members, East Kingston and Port Royal, members, I hope you appreciate the amendments to the agenda, which also helps with some of the standing orders in following the proceedings of the House.
Madam Speaker, I ask the Minister for Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport to answer the questions in my name.
Minister, turn your mic on, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Responding to questions raised by Member of Parliament, Member Philip Paulwell, on Tuesday, the 17th of July, 2024. Question A, in relation to electricity, can the Minister state the total amount of technical and non-technical losses experienced by JPS? Response, in the documentation provided by the Office of Utilities Regulation, OUR, it was outlined that in 2023, the Jamaica Public Service experienced technical losses amounting to 7.67% and non-technical losses of 17.91%. Question B, can the Minister state the dollar value of percentage of electricity that is stolen from JPS Distribution Center? Response, in the documentation provided by the Office of Utilities Regulation, it was outlined in 2023 that the dollar value of electricity stolen from the JPS distribution system was US $28,197,648, representing 19.82% of the total electricity distributed. Can the Minister state how much of the losses, both technical and non-technical, is paid for by the Jamaican consumer? In the documentation provided by the OUR, it was outlined that the Jamaican consumers bear the cost of both technical and non-technical losses of part of their electricity billing under the following components. 1, technical losses. Consumers cover the extra fuel costs incurred due to technical losses through the fuel charge. B, the extra operational and maintenance expenses resulting from technical losses are included in the non-fuel portion of the bill. 2, non-technical losses. The cost of non-technical losses related to fuel is recovered through the fuel charge, which is passes the fuel cost to the consumer, adjusted for any change in the heat rate. And B, the costs associated with non-technical losses are recouped through the energy and demand charges, which are adjusted annually based on JPS's performance in the previous year. Question D, what plans are in place to reduce the amount of theft of electricity? Response, the ministry is currently in the process of securing the Cabinet's position and directive to address and implement strategies aimed at reducing electricity theft. Our plan is structured among 4 key pillars designed to reduce non-technical losses at the macro level. Empowerment, focusing on providing communities with the tools and resources they need to acquire legal electricity, making it more accessible and affordable for all. Enforcement, strengthening legislation and regulations to effectively deter electricity theft, which with an emphasis on improving monitoring and penalties for non-compliance. 3, energy efficiency, encouraging the use of energy-efficient appliances and removing access to inefficient lighting for incandescent bulbs to reduce overall electricity demand. 4, communication, building stronger relationships and trust between key stakeholders with the goal of shifting the culture away from non-payment and illegal usage towards responsible and payment compliance. At the micro level, the ministry plans to undertake detailed analytical assessments to accurately quantify non-technical losses at the medium voltage feeder level, targeting specific communities with historically high non-technical losses. The data will inform tailored technical solutions specific for each high loss area, allowing for a more precise and effective reduction of electricity theft. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, just a few follow-up questions.
Go ahead, Member.
To the Minister. Minister, in relation to question 3, which states that can the Minister state how much of the losses is paid for by the Jamaican consumer? I'm not sure if we've gotten the correct answer, but can I ask you, is it true to say that 17% of what the consumer pays relates to the actual theft of electricity?
That's correct, Member. The information given to me here by the OUR states technical losses amount to 7.67% and non-technical losses, which would be theft, is 17.91.
That being the case, Minister, we're seeing an increase in the amount of electricity theft for which a consumer has to pay. So, Minister, in light of the fact that while we're seeing this increase of money that the consumer has to pay, we're seeing an increase in the profits of the JPSCO. What is being done to deal with the consumer side of the problem, which is to get them to pay less for electricity theft? What is being done by the JPSCO to lower the amount of theft that consumers have to pay for?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's good to finally see you being an advocate for the consumers, I must tell you. You were quite silent over the last few weeks. Your silence was deafening over the last few weeks between July and August. Madam Speaker, let us be frank and honest. The situation is, based on the current license that the JPS has, they recover everything from the consumer. So the fact of the matter is, whether they have a very, very aggressive anti-theft program in place or not, it makes no difference to the bottom line. The fact of the matter is that this is something that requires not only JPS, but it requires all of the stakeholders, including the government, to come up with a comprehensive plan to deal with non-technical losses, which in essence is theft. The fact is, Member, that we are moving there. We are working with our partners, the IDB and the World Bank, to assist us in coming up with a proper holistic approach. But as the Minister of Finance and I have discussed, it is going to take significant amounts of funding that will have to come from the government if we are to really tackle this. There is a commitment to do so. It's a matter of finding the fiscal space. But it is a matter that has been raised at the highest level, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, and most importantly, the Minister of Finance. And we are going in the wrong direction. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Non-technical losses are increasing rather than reducing. And at the end of the day, the consumer, each and every one of us in here, and who has a connection to JPS, pays the piper. So it is something that is high on my agenda. It is not an easy fix based on the geographics and, of course, the culture that we have. But I look forward to working with you and all other stakeholders in finding a solution and a commitment from the government to find the resources, the fiscal resources that are going to be needed to tackle this in a comprehensive manner.
Madam Speaker, to the Minister, in conceding that the problem has gotten worse with greater theft, is the Minister aware of a private member's motion that I had tabled some time ago, almost 3 years now, providing specific proposals for lowering the amount of theft that is occurring, thereby lowering the price of electricity to the consumers, one. And secondly, in relation to the operations of NESOL, can the Minister state what is the situation with that organization, which had as one of its functions the increased use of energy efficiency devices and also regularization of electricity in urban communities?
Question number one, member, is I don't have a copy of that, and I would wish for you to provide me with one, and I'd be more than happy to discuss it in detail with you. And secondly, as we are aware, NESOL is closed, and that has been taken over by the ministry under by Minister of State, Honorable J.C. Hutchinson. There is a program for rural electrification that continues. It is not funded to my expectations, but the fact of the matter is that the funds from NESOL did come back to the ministry, and you will recall that it went to the Ministry of Local Government and only came back to us last year in terms of the rural electrification program, and that is being spearheaded. And I have been out several times before Beryl, and there are some programs that are being done by JSIF, as you know, and JPS, but there still is a tremendous amount of communities that do not have proper electricity, and it is something that we are going to continue to advocate for additional funding. I'm even hoping that a possibility of getting some funds in the supplementary that is to come shortly, the first supplementary, to be able to continue that program.
Madam Speaker, the Minister says he is not aware of the private member's motion. It's actually number 8 and was tabled on the 27th of April, 2021. 2021. And it appears here every week when we meet. And this shows a commitment to lowering the price to the consumers. But, Madam Speaker, going back to the question of NESOL. NESOL wasn't about REP. It was about urbanization, regularization of electricity theft. And you're saying that is no longer your responsibility? Pardon? Oh, it is back in your ministry. So it's quite rightly to ask you, because last week we did receive on the Cabinet's report a new board for NESOL. So are the funds in place for NESOL to operate as an entity, and where are they located?
Member, I asked her to give me some time to research it and see exactly what the status is. And I'll get back to you on it.
Thank you. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motion for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. House Leader? Oh. Deputy Speaker.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Chairman of the Private Bills Committee, I now move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel in Jamaica, Incorporation and Vested Act 2024.
Clerk. A bill shortly entitled the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel in Jamaica, Incorporation and Vesting Act 2024, read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of a second reading of the bill.
Clerk.
Madam Speaker, before we go to public business, I beg to move for the recommittal of the item statement by ministers to allow the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries and Mining to make a statement. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thanks, House Leader. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Next, we will hear from the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, the member from St. Elizabeth Southwestern. Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have circulated some copies. I've also sent the electronic version to the leader of opposition business, Member Paulwell, so he can share the electronic version as well. Madam Speaker, members of the House, today I rise to provide another comprehensive update on our ongoing Hurricane Beryl recovery program, a strategic initiative aimed at restoring Jamaica's agricultural sector, which suffered significant damage following the passage of Hurricane Beryl on July 3, 2024. Madam Speaker, since Hurricane Beryl, I have visited some of the hardest hit areas and witnessed firsthand the devastation that our farmers and communities have endured. From Bog Hole in northern Clarendon, where I journeyed through with Member of Parliament Sibley's, to parts of South Manchester, where I journeyed with Member of Parliament Chin, to multiple communities across my own Southwest St. Elizabeth. I've seen devastated crops, destroyed greenhouses, and farmers facing uncertain futures. In those moments, it became clear that we had to act swiftly. And the team at the ministry, alongside our partners, wasted no time in launching a coordinated response. From the onset of this recovery effort, our objective has been clear: to revitalize production, rebuild infrastructure, and provide the necessary support to our farmers so that they can return to their livelihoods and strengthen the resilience of our agricultural sector. Today, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to report that through the decisive action of this government and the resilience of our farmers and our officials, we are well on the road to recovery. Madam Speaker, everywhere I've been, the indomitable spirit of the Jamaican farmer has stood out. Whether it is Valentine Williams and Robert Powell, yam farmers in southern Trelawney, or Delroy Green in Clarendon, or Vaughan Ebanks from Pedro Cross Flagaman, or the coffee farmers in Bangor Ridge, Portland, or the fishers in White House and Parity, our Jamaican farmers and fishers have the most indomitable spirit amongst all our people. Let us celebrate and encourage them. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased that the government was able to allocate an additional $1.4 billion
towards Hurricane Beryl recovery program. To date, Madam Speaker, almost 900 million has been allocated through the Rural Agricultural Development Authority to execute this program. These funds have been directed towards critical activities, including providing seeds, fertilizer, livestock, infrastructure rehabilitation, and technical assistance to our farmers. Madam Speaker, allow me to highlight some of the key achievements of the program thus far. 2 weeks after Hurricane Beryl, our team started the recovery effort. This is the quickest response of any government to any natural disaster of this magnitude. So far, Madam Speaker, we have successfully replanted 630 hectares, which is 1,557 acres of land with essential crops, including cabbage, tomato, lettuce, sweet pepper, cucumber, and watermelon. Madam Speaker, having stood in fields that were once barren, seeing them now green and growing again, once again is testament to the resilience of our farmers and the quick action of our teams. From our most recent assessment, 14,370 farmers across the parishes of St. Elizabeth, Manchester, Clarendon, St. Catherine, Westmoreland, and St. Anne have benefited directly from RADA through this program. Over 10,000 packs of seeds, with the focus being on cabbage, tomato, sweet pepper, which account for about 40% of the 10,000 packs, has already been distributed. We've also focused on watermelon, cauliflower, and cantaloupe. Madam Speaker, over 6,500 bags of fertilizer have already been distributed, again focusing on some of our hardest hit parishes. Additionally, given the critical role of yams, cassava, hot peppers, and papayas in the local food supply, efforts have been focused on the provision of land preparation support, distribution of fertilizer and pesticides to aid in the restoration efforts.
Minister, as much as the banter is appreciated, members, please, I would like to hear the presentation of the minister. We can't overdo the heckling because it distracts from us being able to hear the presentation. And particularly the member from North St. Catherine North Central. From St. Catherine North Central. Member Dieter Garvey.
Madam Speaker, we have also focused, Madam Speaker, on training sessions. Training sessions on best practices for post-disaster crop recovery and resilient farming techniques, which were conducted in almost all of our major production areas. Madam Speaker, the reality, having spoken to farmers who were unsure if they would be able to ever plant again, now thanks to the seeds, fertilizer, and technical support, they are back out in their fields. But Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, we don't have to banter about it, because you know, Madam Speaker, the good news, Madam Speaker, is that our efforts have already begun to bear fruit. Last week, members, we actually saw the re-emergence of some of our local vegetable lines on our market shelves. That deserves a big round of applause. Madam Speaker, we expect the recovery to continue at pace, and we expect to reach or even surpass pre-hurricane levels within the next 6 months. Importantly, we have introduced high-quality disease-resistant seeds, and with these efforts, we expect to reduce losses from pests and disease outbreaks and increase crop yields and improve resilience. We've introduced high-quality seeds, and I'll ensure that the member from North Central, who is North Central St. Catherine, who is demanding some seeds. As a good Minister of Agriculture, we will ensure that the seeds are planted. Madam Speaker, the banana and planting industry. We're talking about banana now. The banana and planting industry, which contributes over 13 billion Jamaican dollars annually to our economy, was severely impacted by Hurricane Beryl. Detailed assessments reveal that approximately 64% of the crops in production were damaged, translating to over $1.8 billion in terms of losses and the need to resuscitate some of our crops to achieve normal levels of production. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to report that we have already distributed $40 million in support of our banana and planting farmers, providing them with much-needed fertilizers to rejuvenate their crops. In fact, we would have started this program in Central St. Mary with the member who was there, well, on the border of Central and Southeast St. Mary. And we had representatives from Dr. Guy's office and from Dr. Dunn's office, where we handed out some fertilizer to our banana and planting farmers. In fact, already 2,490 affected farmers with an established crop area of 2,340 hectares have achieved some support. Madam Speaker, we have allocated, Madam Speaker, an additional $38 million to the Banana Board. So they have already distributed $40 million, but we've allocated an additional $38 million. This came out of our meeting, Madam Speaker, where we found that the $40 million would not carry us far enough to the small banana farmers, those who operate on less than 0.2 of a hectare. And we are leaving out none of our small farmers. So this $38 million will be distributed through RADA in collaboration with the Banana Board, and will target some of those small farmers in places like Northern St. Elizabeth, South St. James, St. Mary, all our banana planting and planting areas. To mitigate storm risks, the Banana Board continues to provide technical support and also to implement the Banana Industry Catastrophe Fund with the support of the European Union. Madam Speaker, in 2024, 79 farms covering 767 acres were registered under the Banana Catastrophe Fund. Of these, 73 farms, consisting of 563 acres, suffered catastrophic damage, which is damage exceeding 50%. At the recent meeting in July, the Banana Catastrophe Fund Oversight Committee approved the recommendation to compensate 73 farmers to the tune of $11 million. Each farmer will receive fertilizer sufficient for 1 6-week cycle of fertilizer application. This is a testament, Madam Speaker, when you have policies that are far-reaching and forward-thinking, such as the Catastrophe Fund by the Banana Board, persons won't only have to depend on the government to provide support. And I want to commend the Banana Board and the banana farmers for taking this initiative. They deserve a round of applause. Madam Speaker, our greenhouse farmers suffered significant loss. We have already procured 27 million. Oh.
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired.
I need about.
Madam Speaker, the member is requesting an additional 10 minutes to complete his presentation. I ask if you would be generous enough to consider that request.
Thanks, House Leader. House, the question is that the member's time be extended by 15 minutes to allow for completion of his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, recognizing the important...
You are always going to get the benefit of the House when respectfully you provide a statement so that the members on both sides of the House are able to follow, and that does allow the members to have an appreciation for how long it will take you to complete. And so, Minister, thank you. This is a practice we hope will continue.
Lesson well learned, Madam Speaker. Don't worry, I have it for you. Madam Speaker, recognizing the importance of protecting agriculture, we've already procured $27 million worth of material, including plastic, antiviral netting, and shade cloth. Distribution for the greenhouse farmers in the hardest hit parishes will commence next week. An additional $55 million is currently in procurement for additional material. Already, Madam Speaker, 35 greenhouse farmers have benefited from 1,250 bags of fertilizer, potting mix, and vegetable seeds. Furthermore, I'm pleased to announce that the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture has committed $3.1 million in greenhouse materials, further bolstering our efforts in this crucial area. Members of the House, our farmers are not just recovering, but they're becoming more resilient. In addition to crop recovery, we have placed a special emphasis on the livestock sector, which was equally devastated. Again, I recall visiting livestock farms where the loss of animals were overwhelming. But in response, we have acted decisively. We have already, Madam Speaker and members, started distribution of broiler chickens. And I've provided a table in relation to our breakdown because we are looking to distribute 57,600 broiler chickens to replace the losses suffered across our parishes. In fact, we've earmarked a percentage for St. Elizabeth, Manchester, Clarendon, all parishes, but it's based on the level of loss. Already, 833 livestock farmers have benefited from these interventions. Furthermore, we have a program, members, about $26 million has been allocated because not only did our chicken farmers lose their chickens, a number of them also lost their infrastructure, their chicken houses. And as such, for the first time, we will not just be focusing on providing chicken. We will also be helping them in building back their chicken houses. So, Madam Speaker, we have earmarked $26 million to help provide infrastructure support, such as shelters and feeding systems for our livestock farmers. Madam Speaker, our dairy farmers have already received 20 tons of feed and about 30 relief kits, which consist of recovery medicine for animals and cleaning agents. We're currently repairing the infrastructure, milk and parlor infrastructure for 3 farmers. But when I went into the field and I was distributing some of these recovery kits and I spoke to our dairy farmers, what they highlighted, Madam Speaker, is that while they didn't suffer a lot of animal loss, they suffered significant loss from not having electricity for an extended period. So even when they were able to gather the milk, they were unable to store and distribute the milk. That has caused about $10 million in losses to our dairy farmers, and that is direct loss to their profitability and their cash flow. So, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that the Ministry of Agriculture will be providing direct support to the tune of $5 million. 50% of the losses we will provide back to the dairy farmers in the form of direct cash grants to those farmers. Madam Speaker, we often overlook our beekeeping industry, but the truth is beekeeping is at the heart of agriculture because bees play such a critical role. As such, they're essential for pollination and honey production, and a number of our bee farmers lost their apiaries. We're providing $7.1 million in support to help our affected bee farmers. And we have broken this down as follows. We're going to be providing them with some supplementary feed in the form of sugar at about $5 million. We're going to provide $1.8 million worth of pollen supplement, and we're also going to be providing $200,000 to focus for a number of bee farmers on training. Madam Speaker, we've identified 51 roads to be done as part of our Hurricane Beryl recovery program, and work will start on these roads over the next few weeks. These projects, Madam Speaker, are small road rehabilitation projects. So we have asked the teams to go out and where they have identified roads that have suffered some damage from Hurricane Beryl, especially those farm roads which were done over the last few years. We've asked that that information be passed to us so that we can do some remedial work, because we do not want to lose the gains that we have made. So we've earmarked $70 million to treat with some work across 51 roads. We have gone to the Ministry of Finance and we have gotten an additional allocation of $200 million, Madam Speaker. And I'm sure you will be happy to know that we are going to be earmarking the majority of that additional support, about $130 million, to treat with roads in our Blue Mountain Coffee Belt. So to deal with some of our roads in East Rural St. Andrew, West Rural St. Andrew, parts of Portland, and of course parts of St. Thomas. They are long, long overdue. But members, I need to make this point at this juncture. So I have just spoken about 51 roads that we're going to do, and an additional $200 million. You know, in years gone by, when the affairs of the country were not properly managed, when you had things like Hurricane Beryl, and you had farm roads that were damaged, you would have to dip into your own farm road budget to treat with these new expenses. Under this Andrew Holness-led government, all of these repairs, all of these repairs that I've spoken to have not challenged our already $670 million farm road budget. So what this means in real term, members, we're going to do the additional 51 roads, but we have already earmarked 46 roads to be done. 21 of those roads have already been contracted. So as we are in Parliament speaking now, from our original farm road program, roads are being done in Touchwalk to Norwood, in St. Anne, right? Roads are being done in Coca, in Northern St. Elizabeth, Adelphi Mountain in St. James, Stuart Mountain in St. Mary, and I saw a man post Road Phase 3 in Clarendon. That is happening as we speak. Madam Speaker, sometimes we don't play the impact of good government and good governance. When you manage the economy well, you can ride and whistle. We are riding and whistling, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, our coffee farmers are not being left out. JACRA has already distributed fertilizer and chemicals to over 400 farmers. We have started the distribution of our grafted cocoa plants, pimento seedlings, and coffee seedlings, and we have spent about $5 million thus far. This is part of a wider recovery effort where we've earmarked $50 million across coffee, cocoa, turmeric, ginger, pimento, and nutmeg farmers. Madam Speaker, in response to the challenges posed by Hurricane Beryl, the sum of $57 million, $7 million of which was contributed by the private sector, has been put towards a comprehensive land preparation assistance program to provide tillage and land clearance support to farmers. Again, a number of our farmers were unable to go back out into their fields because they needed some support to clear those fields. To date, over 190 hectares of land has been prepared, benefited 480 farmers across major parishes of St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, Manchester, Westmoreland, Trelawney, and St. Catherine. Madam Speaker, again, food security has been brought into sharp focus by Hurricane Beryl. Everywhere you go on the road, old and young are now recognizing how important it is for every household to grow some food. As such, Madam Speaker, I spoke about it in my sectorial earlier this year, and I'm pleased to announce that we will start the Urban Harvest Program come next month. Under that program, Madam Speaker, we will be distributing 3,000 backyard gardening kits, especially across our urban centers, to ensure that we are focusing on food security. Additionally, we will be for the first time distributing 250 vertical farms. We are going to be going into distributing vertical hydroponic farms. They can be indoor or outdoor because we have to embrace the technology in relation to food security. This application process will commence in October. It will be technology-based and on a first-come, first-served basis. And of course, the selection criteria will be communicated. I will also let the urban MPs know that we are going to be embarking on an urban chicken rearing program under the Urban Harvest to, again, build back up our poultry sector. Another area, Madam Speaker, we lost about 890 hectares of fruit trees during Hurricane Beryl. As such, Madam Speaker, we need to embark on a massive fruit tree replacement program. I want to work with our MPs in this regard, and I'm now throwing out the challenge to MPs to come up with some fruit tree planting initiatives. I have allocated 30,000 fruit trees to be distributed among members of Parliament. We are going to do it first come, first serve. So I'm saying, MPs, identify an area in your constituency, reach out to us. We will provide you with the planting material and the technical support. Let us start planting our fruit trees again. Madam Speaker, as I am closing, I want to thank the private sector and our international partners that have come forward to support our recovery initiatives. To date, the ministry has received $81 million in cash and kind from these partners, with an additional estimated $40 million of direct input support that have been provided to the sector. The recovery efforts have been bolstered by the generosity of our partners, including donations from FirstSun and Hypro, 2,000 bags of fertilizer from FirstSun, 230 bags from Hypro. Those have been really invaluable in replenishing soil nutrients on recovering farms. Madam Speaker, our fisheries sector has also received support. Hurricane Beryl affected about 11,233 fishers island-wide, with more than 67 fishing beaches suffering damages estimated to cost in excess of $221 million. We have distributed $29 million in disaster relief to over 580 fisher folks across the island. This includes vouchers for the purchase of fishing gear and assistance with repairing cooperative buildings. Specifically, Madam Speaker, we have done distribution in Westmoreland, White House, in Scotts Cove, in Portland Cottage, In St. Thomas, in St. Catherine, we have provided $700,000 to the Half Moon Bay Fisherfolk Cooperative in Hellshire in Portmore, for them to repair their cooperative building. Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to recognize the invaluable support of the Sanders Foundation, which has donated $2.5 million to the fisheries sector, including 62 1.5-inch mesh wire panels to Rocky Point, 23 to Portland Cottage, 62 to Parity, 92 to Great Bay. Additionally, the NCB Foundation and Rainforest have earmarked $10 million for Fisheries Beach development. That deserves a big, big round of applause. The Breads Foundation in St. Elizabeth has also helped with 120 fisherfolk receiving wire and nets from the Breads Foundation. Madam Speaker, we have already distributed $150 million to our members of Parliament. 100 million around agriculture, 50 million around fisheries. Again, that distribution has been based on the extent of damage that was suffered under Hurricane Beryl. Madam Speaker, as I close, an analysis of our food prices indicates that while some crops such as tomatoes and certain varieties of sweet peppers saw significant price increases due to supply disruptions, others like lettuce, carrots in the weeks following the passage of hurricane experienced price stabilization. However, I'm pleased to report that some staples such as cucumbers, watermelons have maintained some stability, and we have, Madam Speaker, intervened. So we have looked at helping our farmers come back, and we've also allowed traders to tap into external sources to provide that stability. So the ministry has implemented targeted interventions to support our farmers, enhance crop resilience, and improve supply chain efficiency. These measures, combined with the natural recovery of our agricultural lands and the dedication of our farming community, give us the confidence that we will see a return to more favorable and stable prices and affordability for all Jamaicans. Members of the House, this recovery is not just about numbers. It's about the people whose lives have been disrupted by a disaster. It is about the farmers and the fishers who are the backbones of our economy. They have shown tremendous resilience in the face of adversity. And I know there is still a lot of ground to cover. But I really want to thank the teams at the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, especially the team at RADA and the National Fisheries Authority. They have been out providing technical assistance, ongoing support, training initiatives, and helping our farmers and fishers prepare for future climatic shocks. Madam Speaker, in closing, I'm pleased to report that the Hurricane Beryl Recovery Program has made significant strides in stabilizing our agricultural sector. While there is still work to be done, the progress thus far is encouraging, and we are well on our way to restoring agricultural productivity to pre-hurricane levels. This program not only supports immediate recovery, but strengthens our overall resilience for the future. As we approach the Yuletide season, traditionally a period of increased demand for fresh produce, the outlook remains positive. We will continue to pay attention to all areas of agriculture, including what is happening in relation to our chickens, our poultry sector, and ensuring that our consumers have access to the best poultry in the world. The surge in the supply from various production areas will help to ensure that the prices for vegetables and fruits remain stable. The road to recovery is long, but I am confident that under the leadership of this Prime Minister, with the support of the members of the government, with the indomitable spirit of our farmers and fisherfolk, not only will we recover, but we will thrive. God bless you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Kingston East and Port Royal will respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My colleagues have certain questions to ask, but in responding, apart from thanking the Minister for quite a lengthy presentation, and to thank him for tabling the presentation, Minister, just a few observations. Firstly, you will note that the level of enthusiasm on this side is quite different from the enthusiasm on that side. And Minister, may I suggest, because firstly, you mentioned a number of tours that you did, and you name the colleagues that you went with. It would be good if you could name some colleagues on this side. On this side. Well, he didn't name everybody on that side. He named a few. Madam Speaker, yes. Right. So Minister, I can speak very well on behalf.
Members, that's enough. Members, that's enough.
Minister, as
allow the member on his feet to speak.
As an urban member of parliament, I believe that there are significant shortcomings in relation to urban communities. Mr. Minister, I see, for example, that you have a list of parishes where you support a chicken rearing program. I don't see Kingston in that. And you know that in Kingston, there's a member from Central Kingston here too, you know, so the Ministry of Agriculture, and in particular RADA, every year RADA has allocated special programs for chicken for urban communities, and I see that there is none being provided for Kingston. Minister, in relation also to beekeeping, that's an activity that's quite available in urban communities, that has been supported by RADA over time. Nothing here. Minister, you have a subsection here dealing with urban harvest. Where is that for urban communities? Because to date I'm not aware that anything is provided. And Minister, in relation to fisheries, last year an allocation was made to urban communities, communities with fishing, mine in particular, and I know others. To date, that allocation has not been settled, even though we just got a new amount of 500,000. So perhaps your ministry needs to look into what has happened with those funds from last year. And you've mentioned...
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired.
Just a minute.
Suppose that 5 minutes again. What is not this spokesperson agriculture?
Madam Speaker, the member's time for responding having expired.
What is not agriculture?
I beg to move that it be extended by 5 minutes? 2 minutes to allow him to complete.
House, the question is that the member's time be extended by 2 minutes to allow him to complete his response. Member from St. Andrew Southwest, member from St. Catherine would like to do a clarification, after which of something in the response. So I'd ask that you allow him to keep his mic on and then turn your mic on, member. Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Speaker, in closing, I wanted to inquire of the Minister, of the 150 million that you have allocated to MPs, I would like to know how these funds are allocated, ratably, same to each MP, and whether or not urban MPs are going to receive. And finally, Minister, you have spoken about Christmas. And many consumers are worried about the upcoming Christmas holidays, especially when already there's a noticeable shortage of eggs and chicken meat. Can you explain how you intend to satisfy the demand, and how are you dealing with the current price increases for other produce that are grown locally, because prices are still very high in relation to certain produce? And finally, just to say to you, Madam Speaker, as the question is asked, why I'm addressing agriculture, on this side we decide who speak on whatever subject. Yes.
Member from St. Catherine Southwest.
Madam Speaker, the member from East Kingston, Port Royal mentioned or stated then that the minister spoke about chicken rearing and replenishing for after burial. But I need to remind him, and the former mayor for Kingston, she knows that very well, the member from Southwest St. Andrew, that it is illegal to rear chicken in the town because of the Town and Country Planning Act. You can't raise chicken in Kingston. You can't raise Kingston based on the Town and Planning Act. Secondly, you can't. It's against the law. It's against the law. Secondly, he mentioned about you can't raise in town and the Town and Country Planning Act. He mentioned about benefits for fishing areas. He doesn't have none. You are the only one that has fishing area in Kingston. George, shut him out. Legally, she's the only one that has a fishing beach here. You don't have none. And then, let me finish. I didn't cut you.
Point of order.
You did allow me to finish.
Point of order.
I'm not going to yield. Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me sit. What point of order? Because I want to raise kitchen Kingston.
Member from St. Catherine Southwest.
Allow me to complete. There's a point of order. You can raise chicken in Kingston and St. Andrew.
Member Hilton, turn your mic off, please.
Wonderful. The point of order is that the member is missing in the House in two respects. Firstly, the member is seen so many times in Port Royal eating fish and bami.
Madam Speaker, the member mislead this House. I have never had fish and bam in Port Royal. I don't, a matter of fact, not even the canteen I eat fish in here. Unless it's all over bay, I don't eat fish nowhere else.
Madam, I wish for this House to descend into this era, but while I might have been mistaken about his identity, the community of Port Royal, and in fact, a portion of Raytown extends into East Kingston. We do have significant fishing that takes place. So I want to correct that. And Madam Speaker, there are places in East Kingston, especially around the foothills of Warwicker, that there is significant agriculture taking place, including goat rearing, pig rearing, and chicken. The minister is well aware because RADA has been there many times and has in fact approved resources for these facilities.
Minister, if you don't mind, Minister, if you don't mind, would you please take notes? We have 3 questions. Member from St. Andrew Southwest, the member from St. Andrew Western, and the member from St. Catherine Eastern. That will conclude the questions, Minister, after which you will respond. And then, House Leader, it will be over to you for public business. Go ahead, members.
Can I go ahead? Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister, I wouldn't mind if you would be able to tell me the most affected fruit trees in terms of damage, because I personally believe that we need to really start looking at, instead of using palms to beautify corridors, we start to use fruit trees.
Thanks, member.
Yes.
You have to stick to the question, member.
Yes, I know, Madam Speaker. I'm not going very far from it either. In terms of the 51 roads, Minister, I personally would love to see a breakdown in terms of these roads. Do you have them now with you, or could you provide the Parliament in order that we'll be able, because I know that there are some roads in St. Catherine, and I do not know whether or not they were visited. And just, Minister, in terms of this 150 million, and I'm certain the other members would agree with me, sometimes, you see, it is very important that we clarify and break down so that the general public will understand and they don't come at the various members of Parliament that I heard in Parliament that the members of Parliament get 150. So it is very important that when we are presenting these documents, they are clearly stated. Thank you.
Thank you, member.
Madam Speaker, Minister, I have on many occasions raised the point, on many occasions pointed out that a good section of what was formerly West Rural St. Andrew is now a part of Western St. Andrew.
Members, allow us to hear the question being asked by the member from St. Andrew West. Members.
We're going back to the same church.
Members, allow for the question.
Yeah. Minister, I'm repeating a point I've made here several times.
No, member, the question.
Remember, Western St. Andrew, that section comprising the Belvedere, comprising Cedar Valley, and as well as Seaview, the fisher folks in Seaview, are they included any at all in the programs that you have devised and implemented so far?
Members, member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to ask 2 very simple questions. Minister, am I remembering correctly that the possibility for fiscal management of which you spoke earlier has been made possible given the hard work of people like former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller, former Minister of Finance Peter Phillips, and others who established the foundation for the framework for the results that you are able to speak of. That's question number one. Question number two.
Member needing protection?
Yes, I do.
Members, please allow the member to ask her questions without distraction.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The second question, the second and final question I wanted to ask, would you agree with me, Minister, that as important as the support is for our farmers, and I want to agree that it is also important for us in this House and those of us who are in authority in the country to be as honest and as transparent in our actions so that individuals can see us as true leaders acting in their interest.
Minister, thank you. House, please allow the minister to respond.
So, Madam Speaker, I will start from the last of the questions and work my way around. So, Madam Speaker.
Minister, you may sit. You may sit, Minister.
I think
the House is not
now.
ready to hear from you as yet.
I think we're ready. So, Madam Speaker, I'll start from the last. I work my way around. I understand why some questions come up in relation to an agricultural statement. Unfortunately, that side of the House doesn't have any agricultural leadership. And because they don't have any, then they stray. They stray and ask questions that have nothing to do with the statement or agriculture. So I will forgive it. But I'll say something about fiscal responsibility, just to put some things in perspective, Madam Speaker. You know, I looked at the last budget in 2015 to 2016, right? Because the point that I was trying to make in my speech, which may be missed, it's one thing. It's not just fiscal responsibility. It's about how you use the resources to benefit the people on the ground, our farmers. And what I saw, Madam Speaker, in 2016, our entire farm road budget was $182 million, which is not even, that doesn't come close to our response budget, much less our farm road budget. In total, we're going to spend $800 million on farm roads this year. So it may have missed the member that this is not just about responsibility, but it's about having a government who will use that responsibility to better the lives of our farmers. That is what we're doing now. Again, the member from Western, St. Andrew, again, and you know, he's my friend, and so I'll respond. But this statement, Madam Speaker, was not about our overarching agricultural programs. This statement was about Hurricane Beryl recovery, right? It was about Hurricane Beryl recovery, right? So the question, member, definitely in our overall agricultural program, the areas that you've identified, I have no difficulty once there are registered farmers in that area to work with you and work with those farmers. I have no challenge with that, member.
So says that I was not speaking about Hurricane Beryl damaged. I was. It may not have been the most badly damaged, but they did suffer damage, and that is what I was speaking about that.
All right, so thank you, member. So I'll speak to you after, member, and we'll see if you have farmers that have been damaged. The member from Eastern St. Catherine, very excellent suggestion about fruit trees. Yeah, I think. So the reality, members, we really have to think about this. The fruit trees that we now benefit from were planted by our generation, right? So we really have to embark on a robust fruit tree planting program. So I think your suggestion is very, very critical. What we did see in terms of what we saw most losses from would be our ackee trees. That is, unfortunately, in the Clarendon, St. Elizabeth belt, a number of them came out. We did see some losses in mangoes as well, right? But almost all areas, all fruit lines. So what we've done is that we're ramping up our nursery support. So I would love to partner with you in some areas in your constituency to see if we can plant out some fruit trees, right? I take the point about the 150 million. Sometimes when we say the big figures, people don't appreciate, and I'll make the point. So, and I'll make the point in answering Member Paulwell's question. And the roads, I will supply a list in relation to the rehabilitation. Member Paulwell dealt with a number of things. Again, I have to remind the member from East Kingston that this is really about Hurricane Beryl recovery. So when you see the table about poultry being distributed, right, it is really to replace the poultry that was lost by farmers, especially in the most heavily affected areas. So you will see a tilt. You will see a tilt towards Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, Manchester, right, parts of St. Catherine, right? But that is not our overall poultry program. So for our overall poultry program, which I did say on the urban harvest, we will also help some of our urban areas. Additionally, what we shared, and you mentioned eggs, member. So what we shared was our broiler chicken distribution of about 57,000. We are starting our pullet distribution for layer chickens. We're starting that in the first week of October, and we're looking to distribute about 50,000, right? So we're going to be helping our farmers, our egg farmers who have lost significantly, to be able to get back. And hopefully, we will be monitoring it for them to be able to get back come by the Yuletide season. I mentioned a few other things. Again, the urban harvest is part of our response, but looking forward, right? And the urban harvest is about how do we build food security in urban areas, right? Especially understanding that some parts of the South Coast are threatened from these weather events. Hence my announcement of the backyard gardening program. And again, backyard doesn't mean that you have to have space. That's why we're going to do some containerized solutions and the vertical gardening. So we're working on that. Just to say, I have toured and I have visited with a number of MPs on your side. Unfortunately, the reality is that not a number of your MPs don't have big farming areas. Nonetheless, I have visited, you want to name, Dr. Guy. We had a wonderful time at the regatta in Padgy Beach, right? Again, working with our fisheries, because that was part of our recovery effort, and the ministry provided direct support so that the fishers could get back out there. And I'll share some of the pictures. And I tour a lot with Member Hannah, because Member Hannah is a big farming area. We have some pictures that can be shared. And I know I am due to go and visit with Miss Natalie Nita, because we have roads. We have roads to open up in that place. That's what I've come. I'd see it's the plan. Two more things. Two more. Keep quiet. Two more things. So, so the 150 million has already been distributed, right? And sorry, the 150 million has been distributed. 100 million for agriculture, 50 million for fisheries. The breakdown, there are 3 tiers, right, depending on the level of damage that was suffered, a lower tier, a middle tier, and a high-end tier. Regardless of political affiliation, that makes no difference. MPs would get the same level once they're in the same tier across constituencies. So for example, in the fisheries tier, clearly yourself, Member Paul, would have gotten some additional support. I have taken note that you had indicated that the original support was not settled, because I'm happy you raised it, because I was of the impression that it was on your side that you hadn't supplied the list. So we'll speak after, because I had a note to speak to you after that has not yet been dispersed. But the money is there. The money is there. And again, like your constituency, Member Burke's constituency that have fishers would have gotten an allocation on the fisheries side. You might not have gotten an allocation on the agriculture side. So we have done that. Finally, just to commend my state minister, Minister Witter, who has been doing a lot of heavy lifting during this time. You know, we both suffered tremendous loss across our constituencies from Hurricane Beryl, but we still had to be out there trying to ensure that in general our agricultural sector rebounds. We will be good for Christmas, and the government and the ministry will do everything to ensure that our citizens have access to food, to our best fresh food at affordable prices come the Christmas season. Thank you.
Thanks. House Leader, Public Business.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I believe we really have had a very fulsome presentation this evening from the ministers on the excellent performance of their ministries. Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today. I therefore invite you to adjourn this Honorable House until Tuesday, October 1 at 2 p.m. at the George William Gordon House. But just before on the motion of adjournment, Madam Speaker, I'd just like to update the House in relation to the program for the State of Constituency debate. It is intended to commence that debate on the 8th of October, and we will go through to the middle of November in order to catch the budget call, so as to fulfill the requirement of enabling presentations from members of Parliament with regards to needs in their constituency to find a place in the budget considerations. Madam Speaker, the effort also to continue to improve the creature comforts within the chambers and the areas around the chamber is going apace, and members would have noticed that there's a little inconvenience in terms of the luncheon arrangements and so on now, but it will be short-lived, and in another 2 weeks, I'm advised that we will have a refurbished, better food, better accommodation downstairs, and better facilities overall, so that we can refresh ourselves to do the people's work with even more vigor and more energy. Madam Speaker, I want to commend the clerk and the team from the House who have been working so hard to enable that improvement to be realized. Madam Speaker, I now beg to move that the House be adjourned.
Madam Speaker, as we anticipate the constituency debate, those debates were intended to influence the budget. I'm suggesting that this time around, the Ministry of Finance be properly be present here. And also the minister, the leader of government businesses, was supposed to say something about the private members' motion as well. But yes, so we need to hear.
Madam Speaker, in keeping with the discussion that the leader of opposition business and I have had on the arrangements for the House, it is intended to infuse within the frame of the debate such opportunities as may be necessary for private members' motions. But the determined period for this has been also identified as to be that period from the middle of November to the end of the session. So, Madam Speaker, the sense that, you know, we have to formalize properly the arrangement for private members' motion, I think is very strong, because the provisions by the standing orders for it is very weak, and you know, the time designated is unacceptable for 5 o'clock in the evening onward on a Thursday when the House doesn't meet, in fact. So we have to rearrange that in the standing orders and to allow for private members' motion to happen, you know, apace with the other activities of the House. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. The question is that this Honourable House do now adjourn for October 1st, that's Tuesday, at 2 p.m. sharp. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House now stands adjourned.